proud of not to put in my own stuff in stuff that doesn't belong to me. Let's have a look. I think that's, yeah, that's fine. Yeah. I would love the fan on. I'm really, really hot and sweaty from a little cold fever thing. Can you all see that? Is that okay? Yeah. Welcome everybody, and thanks so much for coming to Asian Classics Institute Course 7, the Bodhisattva Vows. For those of you who know what to do here, we're going to start with a little motivation, the offering of a mandala, which means the offering of a perfect world as a bribe for receiving knowledge and teachings from your own mind stream, from whatever you recognize to be your teacher. People may talk to you, people may give you information, but unless there's some virtue in your mind that sparks up and goes, I know what that means, that comes because it's in you. So you're bribing that part of you, we call it your teacher, your enlightened being, to please come and in the next 2 hours give you some insight into the nature of the world. And then after that we do this thing called taking refuge, meaning, for those of you who took the course, we recite it 3 times, and it means, may I understand the things that will really help me from being churned up in a cycle of suffering. May I really go to refuge, go for shelter in the things that can really help me, rather than the pretend things that are illusionary reality tends to sparkle in our eyes for us to go to refuge for them, like food and drink and etc. I also need to premise that the content I'm presenting is not made up. It's something taught on this earth 2,500 years ago and beautifully preserved by a Tibetan tradition, untouched for 1,000 years from the modern world. And that we're very fortunate to have had the blessing of whole lives that took in these teachings, internalized them, made them into realizations. And such a pure lineage has, we've been fortunate enough to get in touch with, to contact. After the Chinese invaded Tibet, the Tibetans left and spread it throughout the world. And throughout the world now there's people that have genuine, traceable information like ours. So check your motivation while you're here, while you offer this mandala, and then we'll start. Peter, you want to go?
Sashi Puki Jishin Metotram Viraling Jin Degen Badi Sangye Shindu Mite Uargi Dropun Nanda Shinla Druparsho Hidam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamniryatayami Sangye Chudam Zogi Choknamla Janchu Bardu Dakni Gapsuchi Dahi Chinyen Gipe Sonamki Roll up and cheer Sangye Druparsho Sangye Shudam Zoki Choknamla Janchu Bardu Dakni Gapsuchi Dahi Chinyen Gipe Sonamki Roll up and cheer Sangye Druparsho Sangye Chudam Zoki Choknamla Janchu Bardu Dakni Katsuchi Dahi Chinyen Gipe
And just stay with that seated in a meditation posture. Get comfortable. We'll do a short meditation. The idea here is just to be perfectly still for a couple of minutes. Your body can be forgotten. If you've got some meditation training, this is where you use it. If you don't, pretend that you know, nobody else will figure it out. What you should do now is just focus on your breath. Watch it enter and exit your nostrils. And just let your mind forget everything else. You can pick up every other worry or concern or wish later on in the next few minutes. For now, all you need to do is see what that breath feels like, the sensation of the breath, the temperature, the feeling. If your mind wanders, just calmly bring it back to the breath. It's no problem. Just press your mind, your awareness against the breath and just watch it enter and exit your nostril. If you can feel the tiny sensation at the tip of your nostrils. See if you can feel the temperature difference, exit and entry. Just feel a sense of relaxation into the posture, mental as well as physical. See if you can find a kind of calming peace with which to use your mind in the next couple of hours. And here, scour your memory banks and invite the holiest teacher, the most perfect being that you can imagine that has ever taught you anything, to come and sit in front of you, just you and them. And be happy to be in their presence. If you have a formal teacher, bring them here. If you have an imaginary teacher, bring them here. If it's your mom or your lover, bring them here and see the feeling that it's like to be in front of them. It's like if the Dalai Lama really came into the room right now and sat in front of you, just for you. And then conjure up some beautiful image in your mind and offer it to them. Maybe it's a memory of something you've done that was beautiful. Maybe it's an understanding that you've had. It could just be a sunset. Whatever the most beautiful thing that pops up into your mind, share it with them. Imagine they can read your mind. And then a kind of humbling sensation as you scour your mind and you look for any negativity that is growing there, any darkness. Maybe it was something negative you did, you were angry at someone, you yelled at someone, you got jealous unnecessarily. You did something that disturbs your mind and it's sitting in your consciousness. With your teacher in front of you, just see if you can look for that with a wish to clean it, a wish to remove it, a wish to try not to do that again so it doesn't disturb your life. There's power in your teacher helping you. should come to a feeling of confidence that that can be removed and stopped. And eventually permanently. And then look through your mind for the most beautiful thing, the highest of your qualities, the most magnificent thing you did today, or said today, or thought today. Or in the last week, maybe you helped somebody that needed help, secretly or publicly. Maybe you didn't get angry when you normally would have. You thought of somebody else rather than yourself. You were kind. Allow your mind to go to that place and feel joy, a real happiness for doing good in your world, with your teacher in front of you. Rejoice. And think of other people in your world who are also doing good, and see if you can feel as happy for them. Whatever it is, doesn't matter so long as it's a goodness. Then look into your teacher's eyes and ask them, please, to always be present to teach you, regardless how your life moves. Doesn't matter if a happiness comes or a sadness comes. That their voice, their presence be ever, ever present with you. May you learn from every experience. May you hear their voice. May you wake up with them. And ask them to always stay. Always stay close. And as you ask them that, watch them rise up, to turn to face the same direction you're facing, getting smaller and smaller until they rest just at the crown of your head, getting brighter and almost translucent. Every good quality that you imagine in them is glowing out of that being. And see if you can feel the sensation of that glow at the crown of your head. See if you can feel them there. Igniting every knowledge, every wisdom, with compassion. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Hot equals hit. I mistyped that, sorry. Who relates to that? Who thinks that makes some kind of sense? Yeah. We're here to talk about the Bodhisattva Vows. These are a kind of behavior of mind and body and speech that transforms your world. But before you get there, there's a few things you need to go through beforehand. So my job for the next 15 minutes is to give us together some kind of sense of truth. You need to hit that wall of truth before you can get this kind of renunciation about the world that we talked about in the last review classes. And to do that, I've got some PowerPoint presentations and some stories, but really what you have to work with, I haven't got any Lego figures. I'm so disappointed, I'm so sorry. Mostly words. Today's about seeing if you can see that wall of truth before you have to hit it. Yeah, and we do that for little small negative habits we have in life. You know, we do it with relationships, we do it with work, we do it with career, we do it with hopes. I did it with hair, it didn't work, and then you hit the truth. When you hit the wall hard enough, the hair falls out, and then it doesn't matter what it is that we're most attached to, that thing will change. So I need to talk about that first before we can even talk about bodhicitta, which is the most beautiful thing to talk about. We'll talk a little bit about that today. I need to give you background on the course. We're going to spend 6 weeks together. This will end, like everything ends, November 21st is the last Thursday we'll do this class. So I'm trying to fit in at least 2 classes per night, like we did the ACI 6. And we'll spend today about the background of what is vows, morality, what are vows in the first place, why morality, how do you get to a feeling of bodhicitta or wanting to vow something. And when we get to that, which will be next week and the week after, we'll go through each of the vows that Buddhists take to build a compassion that's filled with wisdom in their heart, to give a sense of peace grounded in truth about living. Before we get there, we have to have some fuel to get there. So my job is to really depress you for about 15 minutes. And I hate doing it, but we have to talk about this truth thing she talked about. She says, you hit a wall of truth. And you know, when you're pretending to have a life, like things are going well and you're not seeing the signs and things are fantastic, you know, and the longer you leave it, the harder that wall is. I like that she said, if you're lucky, you'll hit a wall. If you're lucky. Because the feeling of bodhicitta will come when you realize most of the people on the planet aren't lucky to hit a wall early enough to make some change. And for some reason, you strange fellows of New York City with me want to figure out some things before we hit that wall. Or you've been lucky and already hit some wall. So think about that for your life in real sense. One problem I have about teaching is we can get heady about words. This has to be about life. About your life. About the life you share with the people you love. About the life you hope for. And about the life that is available and possible for us on the planet. Because if you figure it out for you, you'd want it for others. That's a way to talk about bodhicitta. But then you'll find out what you'll get really highly motivated when that seeming hurt comes, when you hit that wall. You'll get highly motivated just at that time to know the truth, to be free from it. Yeah? Because you don't want to hit the wall again. Like you're no different to ants or cows or pigs, or we're just the same. Every being wants to be free from hitting those walls. We have them physically and we have them psychologically. We'll talk about that. And then there's something that happens when you are present. That makes you want to be present. That makes you want to just observe everything with the finest of detail. And if you've got a training of concentration, that can serve you so well. So I need to talk about that first. So let's talk a little bit about truth. Did I do that? I didn't do that yet. We all have our flavor of what of what things we are not seeing the truth about in our world. The Buddhist philosophy that I share with you tonight is looking at a truth that encompasses every being. And within that is our particular flavor, you know? Of I'm fat, I'm lonely, I'm poor, I'm whatever, yeah? I'm old, I'm hairless, yeah? And it's not to depress you, it's to see the truth. Because without that, you can't function, you're functioning in a pretend world. So I want to see what your truth is. What do you, I want you to be aware of the world we live in. So I picked up a little video I want to share with you. Can you see? This is like 5 minutes. It might be squirmish for some. Just hold your truth while you're watching it, okay?
This is from Samsara.
This is from the movie Samsara, if you've seen it. Might be, if you're squirmish, just look at the world we live in.
Change your diet.
Thanks. Sorry, I needed to do that.
I'm so hungry.
Hungry, yeah. So the reason I talk about that is because something drives you to have a wish to be free from that. So I need to talk about these three levels of suffering. It wasn't just the animals that were suffering there. There's some ignorance that comes from the people involved, us, involved in that activity in the world. There's something not knowing, like there's two kids that were being, in the supermarket smiling at. It's all normal. It's okay to chop up things. In researching what to show you, I want to show you something that wasn't me talking. I went to a ton of videos on YouTube and it was disgusting. It was disgusting. It's like I've forgotten that in my little house with my computer, I don't live that reality. And because I don't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And there's something in that. Because without this grounding, we can just be having a really nice pretend life that things are fine. So bodhicitta needs to be driven by something first. So I need to share with you this idea of the three sufferings. So there's this thing that says any living being on this planet undergoes these three conditions. Yeah? And the first one is dugnyeol gi dugnyeol, which means the suffering of suffering. And that just means regular physical pain that we undergo. So if you're alive on the planet, you have this at some level. This is the reason I talk about truth, is because this was the Buddha's first teaching, was the Four Aerial Truths, or Four Noble Truths, where he says the truth of suffering. And there's three kinds of suffering that he described. And we all have this, and it's not all the time, it's just on and off. You'll have back pain and then it'll go away, or your arm will hurt and then it'll go away, you'll get the flu and it'll go away. And the human condition is mostly on and off pain, this kind of pain. And at some point it gets worse and worse and worse. Yeah. But you have some physical pain in your life and then you're completely focused on that pain. And then you have some mental pain, some depression, some sadness, some jealousy, anything that obstructs your happiness. We have these. This condition is what we have. This is true. It's hard to say this is not true. It'd be lovely to find somebody to point at that is living on the planet and say, that person over there has never had a single physical problem and will never have a pain, back pain, head pain, anything. Will never be sad. It's hard to find that on this realm. This is our condition. So this is a truth. The Buddha said, see this truth before you go and build a philosophy or build any activity. If you see the truth, if you see the state of being on this planet, then you know what's important to do and what's not important to do. So it's not the goal of Buddhism or to take vows to say, I will not do that because Jesus said, or because someone said, or because Mom said, or because it sounds like a really cool thing to do in New York. That's also suffering, The goal here is to say, if you see the truth of our condition before we hit that wall, then you know what to take up and what to give up. Then you know what's worth doing with the life we have. So the first thing to think about and recognize and not shy away from. So I'm interested to see what your personal reaction was to watching those images and thinking about these things. Most of us in the West wants to not look. That's why we put people in hospitals and in crazy houses and we have old people homes and we never see them anymore. And then they get buried somewhere. Yeah? We're all young, healthy. What's that movie, The Island? Is that where all the people are 35 and then... Yeah.
From the 70s?
Huh?
From the movie from the 70s?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know, I'm not that old. Okay, so, we have this suffering of suffering and it's not something new. Apparently they had it 2,500 years ago when the Buddha, apparently everybody also had suffering then, Then the other condition is this suffering of change, gyurwe dugnyeol. And this suffering of change is categorized as any impure pleasure, And impure here means something that will end. Impure means something that was caused by something that must turn off. So the suffering of change, we all experience that too. Meaning any single good thing, the Buddhists say, although it sounds dark, it's a truth. Anything that is of any niceness here on this realm must necessarily end. In a bad ending, it will finish. And if you're really attached to it, it'll hurt when it goes. And so they say anything that is that kind of impure pleasure, because it's not solid or lasting, can't be called a pleasure because it ends in a suffering. And this is what they call licking honey off a razor blade. You can't say that was a nice experience. The initial taste is sweet, but it cuts your tongue. At the end you go, you can't say it's a pleasure. So we have this in every good thing, every attachment we have, it changes. Everybody will have the change. If you're good looks, if you got hair, if you got family, if you got friends, if you got money, if you got a house, if you got health, it changes. It changes. And not knowing this is the thing that perpetuates more of the ignorance that attaches to more of this. So, it changed, I'm grasping to the next thing. I'm grasping to the next thing. I'm grasping to the, and that changes. Then you go to the new job, the new boyfriend, the new house. Recognizing this before we hit the wall gives you a solid foundation to know what to take up and what to give up. This is also in the animal realm. This is in anything on this planet. You can't point to anything that will stay. Even if you have the most perfect relationship, one of the two must die first. And it's finished. You can't say it's staying. And so if it finishes and you spend a lifetime with someone, you love them, it changed, it finished. You can't say it's a pleasure according to this. This is a choice. This is what we have. This is our choice. Our menu for landing on this realm, on this planet. And then the third one is they call the all-pervasive suffering. And this is the fact or the condition that as soon as something begins, it must end. And this they say it's all-pervasive because it's not just for our realm, the desire realm. So for those of you who know Eastern cosmology, the idea of the three realms, the desire realm, the form realm, the formless realms, the six realms in the wheel of life, the human, the animal, the ghost, the hells, the gods and demigods. These realms that we might not be able to see, but the Buddha spoke of, that there are beings who have maybe not physical forms like us, they still will undergo this all-pervasive suffering. So it's all-pervasive because it covers every realm under that cosmology system. Anything locked inside the wheel of samsara has these three. And they all have the all-pervasive suffering. So if you can say, okay, it's sobering to realize it, and some of us shy away from it. I know I do on a daily basis, but there's something sobering about the realization that if this is the condition I'm in, so how come our experience is here and not in that supermarket? How come our experience is in New York and not that pig feeding those? That's a mind experiencing the world. Why did we get this and they get that? Why did we not end up in McDonald's churning up? There's something that produced that. Because we're here doesn't mean that we're not experiencing these at some level. Yeah, and for those of us who have struggled or didn't do ACI for past and future lives, the proof of future lives, and struggle with the idea of past or future lives, then you can see it as a stepping stone, as a metaphor for this life. Bless you. Even Lady Gaga suffers. I mean, she's, she might be in a realm where she's got fame and money, and people with tons of money. If we think money will save us, people with tons of money have these three. They just have more resources to waste time looking for a pretend answer. Some refuge, it'll be a boat, not a $3 latte at Skips. It was money.
She should bump the prices up.
So that's one way to slice the condition we live in. The other way is, these are our choices, okay? We have this life, the life that we are born in, which is the dotted line. Anything up until this point in your consciousness, anything up until this very moment, every good thing you've ever had, every loveliness that served you, every relationship, every piece of food, everything is either a memory. So at best, it's a pleasant memory. But it's finished, it's gone, it's out of here. Every strategy you worked at, your job, every effort you put, every design, it's finished. God knows how much work I put into the stupid energy business in Australia. I mean, I did all these things with meaning but they're finished. They can't help me now. I'm done with that stuff. They're complete. The only thing I have now is my awareness and my capacity right now. So right now, I have whatever I have, which was produced by all the things I did before. Whatever has brought me to this point, has pushed me to this point, has pushed us to this point, at best, is a memory. If not, long gone. I can't even remember the name of some good friends, some lovely times. Definitely can't tell you what I ate 2 weeks ago. Yeah? At best, we have now. We are inexorably, is that the word, pushed between now to some point in our life where we will finish, we will have death. You know that as a fact. That's the only thing we know. So what to do between now and then? You don't even know when it's coming. You don't know, at what point your state of mind will be when it comes, but you know it will come. That you know. You just don't know how long is a Chinese man. How long is a Chinese man? Between now and when that finishes. And if you've done ACI 4, you've gone through the proof that your mind doesn't stop when the body stops. And so the Buddhists say you have two destinations. You have at best any activity at all you do between now and then is listed in those three sufferings above. At best, you will have some kind of pain on and off. If you're lucky, you'll get more on than off the older we get. Then you'll have the suffering of change. Any good thing will necessarily end. There's no amount of cars that you can buy that you can take with you. There's no enough iPhone apps that can help you at that moment.
It's true.
True. Sorry, Paul. Yeah. And then there's this thing ticking, and they say it starts at the moment of conception. Your end date, your expiry date as this thing has a shelf life, and that's coming. That's the all-pervasive. At best, in this life, we have that. Yeah. The second destination is death and what follows. So if you've done the Asian Classics Institute Course 4, where we talk about the mind and the body as separate things, then you know that your mind doesn't end, that it gets pushed on forward. And then there's descriptions about the moment of death. If you think you've gone through some kind of suffering now, imagine what it would feel like to be completely surprised, because you hadn't thought about it, that you are no longer this thing. That somehow your moment has come, and you're either, if you're lucky, you're in a deathbed. Yeah? If you're not, you're randomly somewhere. Run over, stabbed, hurt, cancerous, whatever it is. I mean, we in this room, some of us might know what we're going to die of, and some of us might not. So between now and then, you have the choice of the three sufferings. Great. Or, at the moment of death, they say that the excruciating pain when the body begins to disintegrate and the mind separates from the thing that supports it is so horrific and so disorientated that nothing, unless you're very well trained, can stop the hallucinations and the grasping for attachment that follows into visuals and emotions. Yeah? So if the mind continues, it continues like your mind now, but not so formed and not so structured and not so based. It goes wild with this terror of not knowing what happened. And that's if you're trained. If you, like everybody else, goes around forgetting that this is coming, imagine that moment. I mean, my godmother is 93. Her husband died 20 years ago. She knows it's coming. She feels it, but she can't bring herself to talk about it. It's horrible. She can't plan for it. She's like, it doesn't exist. So then imagine at that moment. The reason I'm telling you this is because if you understand this, understanding this condition is renunciation. Yeah? That feeling, if you've had that feeling in the last 15 minutes at all, that's renunciation. It's not some, I have to give up these things because I have to. Renunciation means this is the condition I exist in. Really it is. And I invite you to say, no, that's not true. I will not die. Really, you know that. No, that's not true. Things don't change for me. I'm always this person. No, that's not true. I never have pain, physical or mental. It's hard, yeah, to look at it. If you look at it, that's renunciation. That feeling that you recognizing that what we just talked about is true. That thing is renunciation. And therefore the goal is to be free of that condition, and not just intellectually as some philosophical idea that some people think, if I put up with a lousy condition, if I put up with pain, if I'm a good Buddhist, I can sit here and you can smack me in the face and I will love you. Yeah, that's not the goal of Buddhism. It's actually a byproduct, this kind of equanimity that builds in you because you recognize the harsh truth we live in. And then you know what to take up, you know what's important in the short time you have left. And then you give up all the waste of time things. Mostly, I don't yet. You know, I think I do, and then I catch myself, I'm like, why am I liking that stupid thing on Instagram? You know? No, seriously. I think, oh, it's just to stay connected with all the bullshit. You know? We have our own flavor of avoidance of this thing. Renunciation is recognizing that thing. Buddhism's goal is radical. It says, if you understand the nature of reality, if you understand this thing we talked about at length, emptiness and karma, if you understand how the world functions, how we project our reality, and we create our reality, but we don't do it in the moment. We do it with a bunch of karma, a bunch of impulses that have been built up over time, and that produces our reality. That's why we're here and not in that pig den. If you recognize what produced this experience, then you know what can produce complete freedom, not just the psychological, I am sitting here and someone's punching me in the face and I am at peace. No, there is nobody punching you in the face anymore. The walls aren't there to be hit in the way that we hit them. There is a state of being, if you understand the nature of karma and emptiness, what the mind does to produce the world, really, that it's no longer I'm putting up and it doesn't hurt while someone's stabbing me. It's that no one's stabbing you. There's nothing like that in your realm anymore. That's the thing. So it's quite radical. And when I discovered that, it took me like 3 years to get that. I'm like, is that what they're talking about? Then that interested me. That has meaning. That's applicable. I couldn't deny, I couldn't reject that what they were saying is true, that there is this kind of suffering. And if you get to touch it, you wake up, you get that motivation to be free from it. That's renunciation. So the goal is to say, I want to be free of this condition. To do that, you need to get educated to say, is it possible to be free? Or are we just fleas that have learned to jump at that height, and then someone took the jar lid off, and we're still jumping at that height? We could jump out of the flea jar. but we don't know. No, the elephants that get chained up with chains first, and then string, and then rope, and then string, and then all they have to do is feel something around their leg and they won't move anywhere. Are we elephants that have been trained to think this is our condition, and within these limits, I believe you, it's possible. But if you really investigate with logic and reasoning, you can understand that the condition does not have to be that way. Truly, not pretend, la-di-da, I'm in spiritual mode, meditating on calmness, while someone's growing a cancer in me. There's no cancer. This is the idea. If you understand where it comes from, you perceive things differently, you know what to do, and this takes training and concentration and practice and time, and we don't have too much time. So renunciation is recognizing that truth. Bodhichitta then is bodhi mind, yeah, wake up mind. Sometimes they translate it as the mind of a Buddha. It's not. It's this state of mind that wishes this, and not just focused on yourself, but focused for all other beings. It's the same recognition. It takes no more effort. You see, once you get the renunciation, once you get to look at things black and white without rejecting them, hiding from them, pretending they don't exist because somehow you landed in a castle and you pretend that the villagers down there, the village idiot doesn't exist and everyone else doesn't exist because I'm in a castle. Once you recognize that this place we are in is covered and littered with beings who have minds and emotions and hopes. They want to be happy like you want to be happy. They want to be free of suffering like you want to be free of suffering. And now you know when the Dalai Lama says free of suffering, he means these three sufferings. He doesn't mean, oh, I hope they don't get backaches only, you know? That they have a nice comfy chair. When the Dalai Lama is teaching, he's saying, I want beings to be free from these three sufferings. So that's the code if you ever go and listen to him. So bodhicitta is just renunciation directed to others. And you're there too, by the way. It's not others and not yourself, okay? This is another common stupid psyche problem we have in the West where, oh, poor me, I'm so terrible. Well, you have it first, I'll suffer. Bullshit. You can't be helping somebody if you're suffering. It should give you strength. It should give you resolve. It should give you power. It should make you present. You shouldn't be disarmed. This is not the point. The point is information, knowledge between now and the end date should give you power to act, to be free from whatever bullshit we have in our lives that stop us from being powerful, meaningful, active beings that understand that there's no lid to the jar. So bodhicitta is going, I'm going to figure it out. I'm sick of this. And I'm not the only flea in the jar. It's like that flea that helped me jump last time, that's my friend, I'm taking them out too. Yeah? So then I want to read from, where was this from? Source of all my good? Lamson Namsum, I think. The three principal paths. Can you all see that? No.
No.
I'll try. Here we go. So Jade Tsongkhapa, you remember him? Yeah, from the first course we did. He said on the 6th paragraph of the 14th verse, renunciation can never bring the total bliss of perfect Buddhahood unless it is bound by the purest wish. This is what we're talking about. And so the wise seek the high wish for enlightenment. And here I want you to think about the metaphor he's using. They are swept along, they're talking about other beings in the jar. They are swept along on 4 fierce river currents. Do you know what those 4 fierce river currents are?
4 Noble Truths?
No, fierce river currents.
Birth, old age, sickness, and death.
Excellent. So birth, old age, illness, and death. Yeah. Chained up in past deeds, hard to undo. What's that? Our karmas, the things that produce our lives. We don't even know they come from us. Yeah, every single thing we did, said, or thought has produced our lives right now. This is what produces our experience. Hard to undo, but they're possible to undo. Hard, but possible, right? So they are swept along the 4 fierce river currents, chained up in past deeds, hard to undo. stuffed in a steel cage of grasping self, smothered in pitch black ignorance. So he's using the metaphor that you and I are in a steel cage, chained up in the darkness, going down Niagara Falls, about to go over the river, okay, over the waterfalls. What is stuffed in a steel cage of grasping self? What does that mean?
Stuff like in our bodies, like stuck to our me and mind.
Excellent. Stuff to the self-existent me and mine. Yeah? That there's a self-existent. Our whole posture about being is that things are fixed the way they are, independent of my interaction or perception with them. This is the way things are. Self-existently that way. That is that way. That is that way. That is that way. We can't help but see that. That's what we're forced to see. We're stuffed in this cage. That's produced by this pitch black ignorance, which recognizes emptiness, the lack of a self-existent nature, which we talked about in ACI 6. Do you get the metaphor? Yeah? So he says, renunciation won't get you there. To get total Buddhahood, you need to think that every single jumping flea in that jar is going to be born, get old, get sick, and die, churning. Yeah? And that's caused because they can't see that things are not self-existent. They are forced to see things as self-existent. And they see that because they have an ignorance about it. They don't know the truth. Yeah? So they say, in a limitless round they're born, and in their births are tortured by the three sufferings without a break. The three sufferings we talked about. Now think how your mothers feel. They say if every being has lived without beginning, then every single being has been your mother at some point. So he's saying, think how your mothers feel. Think of what's happening to them. Try to develop the highest wish. So this is the motivation to say, why have this idea of bodhicitta in the first place? Why want to get free from suffering, not just for myself, but for the sake of others? Yeah. So it's using some kind of logic to say, look, we're all in the same condition. We're all in these four fierce river currents. We're all birthed in here. That automatically says you have the all-pervasive suffering. You will go through old age and sickness, which is the suffering of suffering and the suffering of change. Yeah, and then you'll end up again with the suffering of all-pervasive suffering. The moment of death, and it's got two qualities, that all-pervasive suffering, that moment of death, that shock, that experience that triggers this terror and hallucinations for an untrained mind. And then what follows, which is you don't have a clue. It's like a lottery of anything that's ever churning in your consciousness, producing your next experience. And you know that your experience can change like that. In this world, imagine what it's like when you have no body. You know that at any moment someone says something. I know that you and I, you were riding to Skips or something, and you ran into some guy on the street, and you fell on the ground. It's a millisecond. And then all of a sudden you're on the ground looking up. What happened? And your whole consciousness shifts like that. Imagine then what happens at that moment when you say goodbye to your parts, the things you thought you owned, the things you thought you were them. Imagine when you begin to recognize, this is not me. What the hell is this continuum? What happens now? That grasping, that produces your next experience, ACI 4. So, you then have this wish to attain freedom from this. So, bodhicitta is the wish to attain pure and total enlightenment, and that confused me at the beginning when I first said, well, is there more one type of enlightenment? How many enlightenments are there, right? Pure and total enlightenment for the sake of all beings. And you can get this in two flavors. You can get this in the flavor of a prayer, which is a wish to figure it out. Yeah? So if you have that, I'm like, okay, they're saying that this is possible and I can follow some of the logic, and if you have this wishing to figure it out, that's the wish in the form of a prayer. Yeah? And then there's the wish in form of action, this in form of the will to do something. And that's the vows that we're going to be studying over the next 5 weeks after this one. The wish in the form of action is actually you take on some commitments for yourself to unravel the nature of this suffering, to remove it completely for the sake of you and others. And so the vows are then a code that leads to enlightenment. And then you need some prerequisites for the vow for that code to work, some code of thinking, of perceiving that's grounded in reality, in the truth, and then grounded in logic and perception, emptiness and karma. Understanding deeper and deeper these two ideas, plus all the things that support those ideas, is the grounding for using this code that transforms your life from perceiving it in the way we are forced to perceive it to actually quite a magnificent and beautiful moment-to-moment experience of being free from that suffering. But you can't do it at the surface. It actually needs some depth, and it needs some introspection, and it needs some engagement with yourself. The vows are then a code for you to interact with, a code that's been tested over thousands of years. I'll tell you where the vows came from, etc. in just a second. But first of all, let me share with you a little bit of the commentaries that we're studying. Comes from Jason Kappa, 1357 to 1419. He wrote this thing called The Highway for the Bodhisattvas. And then from Geshe Tsewang Samdrup, he wrote The String of Shining Jewels. There's no picture of him, I couldn't find one. And we don't have his dates either. All we know is that he was the tutor to the 10th Dalai Lama, and the 10th Dalai Lama lived around these dates, 1816 to 1837. How many years is that? That's the 10th Dalai Lama's dates. How old was he?
31.
He died at age 20. So did the 9th Dalai Lama, the 11th Dalai Lama, and the 12th Dalai Lama.
Because they were murdered.
Because they were murdered. Yeah.
All at age 20?
All at age 20. Why at age 20?
Because that's when they become primary.
Excellent. At 21, they take control of the nation. They take political power of Tibet. And at the time, there was conflicts with China. Miraculously, all the 4 Dalai Lamas died at age 20. So he was the tutor, or he was a teacher for the 10th Dalai Lama, and that's why we know his dates are those dates. They're roughly those dates. So that's the main source to understand the vows that are mostly found in the Prajnaparamita, the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, taught by the Buddha, but particularly these two. So they're littered all over the sutras, these vows. But particularly these two, the Sutra on the Essence of Space and the Sutra of Skillful Means, spoken by the Buddha 500 BC. Then around 350 AD, Levels of the Bodhisattva. Master Asanga taught, actually let me go back.
Should we be memorizing these?
Huh?
Should we be memorizing these or knowing these?
It will help you if you remember this, because these characters come up, and these might be in your homeworks and your quizzes, and definitely in your exam. I'm only sharing with you what I'm testing you at the end. So for those of you who don't know thanks for reminding me, the course is I share some information, then there's a quiz and a homework only to help you remember. So you can write it down. I don't care if you cheat. The idea is if you write it down and read it and say it again 2 or 3 times in the 1 week that we're together about this, that will make sure the ideas sink in. Yeah? The idea behind showing you the lineage is to show you that it's actually authentic teaching from the Buddhas. You can go and verify any of these books and any of this information, and also to recognize that at some point these beings were people like you and me sitting down recognizing this is my world. What do I do to be free from the things that bother me in this world? What do I take on and what do I give up doing between now and that moment where I know I'll finish the way I am? So these beings actually took these information on and became that information to the point where they had realizations that freed them from suffering. Hi. So the Sutra of the Essence of Space has vows 5 to 17 of the 64 Bodhisattva vows. There's 18 root vows. And the Sutra of Skillful Means has vow number 18, I think. And then you have secondary vows. No, sorry, this is still the primary vows. Master Asanga, you will find he did a commentary, and he in this text, Levels of the Bodhisattva, he explains vows, primary vows 1 to 4. So that, and the Buddhist sutras make 18 vows. And then you have commentary on the advices by Master Shantideva. What's Master Shantideva known for? Do you know? Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, which we'll be studying for like a whole year. There's 2 courses on it, plus 3. Master Shantideva, 700 AD, he there wrote, it's the first place that he had, that you could see the 18 vows that we talked about before, all in one place, so he wrote that there. And then Master Chandragomi, which is the only picture I could find, he wrote 20 verses on the vows, and here he explains the 46 secondary vows. So for those of you who want to memorize, I think we've got it right, 5 to 17, vow 18, vow 1 to 4, all the vows together, and the second offenses over there. The commentaries we're learning from Tsongkhapa and Geshe Tsewan Trungpa.
How are the vows chosen?
Well, the Buddha spoke them. He said, he explained them in the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, and particularly those 2 sutras we talked about. So, and I can't remember the name of the sutra where he said, once I'm gone, these things are your masters. I am no longer your master. Yeah. Good question. That's 64 vows. That is the end of class 1. Yay! So that covers the first of 10 classes. That gives you a bit of background about the vows. The next, I'm going to give you a little bit more background on what is a vow. Why the hell take a vow and not just do stuff? Yeah? Why not just do it? Well, what's the whole point of it? How does that work? What are the kinds of moralities? And is morality such a thing? Like, it's not, morality here is not what we think of in the West as like pious morality. Yeah, morality here is linked to karma, to your idea of karma. And we know, what do you know about karma? What's a good karma and a negative karma? How do you define a positive karma?
Anything that
gives you pleasure in the short term and leads to enlightenment in the long term.
Beautiful. So anything that brings you pleasure in the short term and leads you to enlightenment free from those suffering in the long term is a positive karma. Yeah, and you might have to do certain karmas that are different to my karmas to get you free from your suffering versus my flavor. Yeah? But first we get the big code, which means how do you remove the common obstructions to that freedom? And then we get a finer code, which is the Bodhisattva vows. And then we get even finer code to get the dust off the road to enlightenment. But before we do that, we'll have a 10-minute break. We'll be back at 5 to 9 in the same bat channel for the same bat information. Thank you very much for joining me. Any questions? Thank you. See you.